Give us this day our daily bread. Amen?
Amen.
When Jesus was very early in his ministry, it seems likely he would have prayed with this prayer. And though we repeat it every Sunday, he was really just giving us the image of what prayer is supposed to look like. And the way he starts it is the most important part. Our Father. Many of you will hear me say something like this when I introduce the Our Father when I preside. This is God's greatest gift to us, that our God is not a distant creator, but that Jesus taught us God is a loving parent to us all. And the word we translate Father isn't really best translated Father. I had a seminary professor who taught me the reality of that Aramaic word Abba, which is dad, but it's not even quite dad, right? How many of us speak another language, right? We'll know that there are words that don't really translate. There are extra words and extra meanings layered into words when we try to translate them. And Frank Tupper, the author of a wonderful book that I read in seminary called Scandalous Providence, which is just a fancy way of saying the shocking nature of God giving things to us, right? He said that it's better to be translated as fatherly mother or motherly father, meaning an encompassing, an all-encompassing word that shows compassion. An all-encompassing word that shows compassion. Now, how many of us have ever had a situation in life where we struggled to know what we were supposed to be doing? Where we struggled to see the path God had laid before us? It's tough, isn't it? It's tough when we feel like we're alone. Because God isn't a visible presence. Not always. Right? In the form of Jesus, we got this visible nature of God. But what did Jesus tell us? To treat people with compassion, to be Jesus in the world. So we're supposed to be the signs. We're supposed to be the physical manifestation. That's a lot, Father Brett. How am I supposed to be God? I make mistakes. Well, we all do, right? It's tough. It can be really challenging to navigate faith, to navigate what we're supposed to be doing in the world. And I'll give you a great example in the faith tradition that should enlighten us to the beauty of this call. How many of us are familiar with the story of Simon Peter? Right? Peter, the rock on which I will build my church. That wasn't a name, by the way, before. The name Peter, what we translate as Peter, was not a name prior to what Jesus gave him. It literally just means the rock. I mean, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is the closest to the actual Peter, right? So, Peter's story is one not like mine, right? Not as a priest. I can't relate to the kind of work he did. I've gone fishing before, but how many of us have ever had to fish to live? Maybe not all of us, maybe not most of us. But we've had to do something to make our living, right? So we can relate to him in that. In that our work is not religious, most of us. And yet, that's who God called. Right? So as he's out there fishing, he's looking for his next day's catch. He's trying to make the money to survive, and then boom, religion hits him in the face. Right? Jesus comes to him and says, "You are the one who will help me build my church. You are the one who I'm going to rely on." And Peter navigates a very tumultuous journey, right? Where he's cast aside. How many times do we read in the gospel, right? Where he says, "Peter, get behind me." Because he's not learning what Jesus is trying to teach him. He's not receiving it. He's not picking up what Jesus is putting down. At the end, at the most crucial moment, what does he do? Bye, guys, I never knew that guy. Here's Jesus. What does he go on to do, though? He makes all these mistakes and yet goes on to lead the church with Paul. Paul, James, and Peter are the three most important figures in the transition of Christianity from a movement to a religion and to the solidification of doctrine, of conversion. Right? It's still a movement. It's very early on. There was no church buildings, but Peter helps us get into a structure that Peter, Paul, and James work together, even when they disagree, to form. And that builds the modern church, right? I mean, things change over time. Change in the wrong direction in some ways, but pivotally, Peter goes on to do the work. So how are we supposed to do the work? Well, folks, I would argue that it's our duty, our job to be like Elisha today. In today's first reading, he says, don't worry about it, there will be enough. Don't worry about it, there will be enough. It's not to discount somebody's challenges. It's instead to say, hey, in your challenges, God will always do the most God can do for you. God will always do the most God can do. God always does the most God can do. That's why we, as Christians, believe in a resurrection. Jesus' resurrection wasn't the first. It won't be. Jesus' resurrection wasn't the last resurrection. It was only the first, right? We will raise again. Folks, our duty as Christians is to feel good about this. It's to share this truth with people. We've got something to share. Amen?
Amen.
What is it? It's love. Amen?
Amen.
We've got something to share. It's love, it's peace, it's truth, and it's humility. I would say that our biggest challenge in the world is figuring out how to share that truth. We feel unable, unworthy. We're all worthy. God made us worthy. All we have to do is say, hey, you are loved exactly for who you are. You are holy. Even if you don't believe it at first about yourself, I would say you need to. But even if you don't, tell it to other people. Practice it, and eventually you'll get it. Amen?
Amen.
Love is our guiding principle. What converted Peter was Jesus' love. Meeting him exactly where he was. God always does the most God can do. Amen?